Hey guys, this is Chad. It's end of week 4, beginning of week 5. Got some exciting updates about what happened this week. So if you remember last week, I said I was going on business travel, and I did. I was gone Monday through Wednesday, and still had some pretty impressive numbers as far as the keto diet is concerned. So one of the things that I was really surprised about Monday when I left, I tested my blood beforehand. I was at on the Keto Mojo meter. Now remember, ketosis is from a 0.5 to a 3.0 millimolars on the blood meter. I tested at a 3.1, which was really good. I was excited about that. But because I was on business travel, I ended up eating out. Went to Mexican food, and I decided it was already going to be a cheat day. So I ate a lot of food. I had 3 full meals, and you know, Mexicans, a lot of fried foods, a lot of carbohydrates, a lot of beans, a lot of rice, so I just decided it was going to be a cheat day, and I was just going to deal with it. So I had an extensive amount of Mexican food, and tested my blood 2.5 to 3 hours later, and I had dropped from a 3.1 to a 2.1, which really surprised me. I thought it was going to completely knock me out of ketosis. But it didn't do that. Then for lunch, that was lunch. Then for dinner, we ended up going to Applebee's, and I figured it was already a cheat day, so might as well just let it all go. We ended up, I got some fried shrimp, which was breaded. I tried to take off as much of the breading as I could, but I also had one alcoholic drink. I actually had a vodka gimlet, and then I drank water after that. But I thought for sure that was going to knock me out. I tested my blood the next morning, Tuesday morning, and it still hadn't knocked me out of ketosis, but it knocked me down quite a bit. So at that point, I had gone from a 2.1 to a 0.9. I was still above a 0.5, but not in the range where I really like to be. I didn't eat it all on Tuesday until dinner time, where I had seafood. I ended up having lobster bisque, halibut, and what really knocked me out of ketosis was the bread. Normally when I eat lobster bisque, I have 4 or 5 pieces of bread with it. I only had 1 piece of bread, but it was enough to knock me out of ketosis. I was back home by Wednesday, and then on Thursday morning, I was completely out of ketosis. I was able to stave that off by using this. This is exogenous ketones, and I actually got this. Is something that Dr. Dom DiAgostino supports. Ketogenics Prime, and what this does is, I'm going to pull the cap off here and show you. It's literally just a powder. So you take a spoonful of the powder, you put it into water, mix it up, and 60 minutes later you are back into ketosis. So the nice thing about this is I've discovered that, at least for my body, I can do a lot of cheating before I need to take something like this, but I can take this on the road with me every night, because I'm not getting on the road the MCT oils that I need in the right quantities. So this will put me back into ketosis while I'm on the road, and keep me there. Now, the one thing that I did do, because I couldn't take MCT oil in the bottle, was the MCT pills. And so those are what the capsules look like. They're soft gels, and they work really well. The problem is it takes 8 of these gels to equal 1 tablespoon of MCT oil. And what you're going to see in this Keto Fat Bomb coffee that I'm going to make tonight is just exactly how much MCT oil I use. So, for instance, this morning I got up. The very first thing I do in the morning is I make the Keto Fat Bomb coffee. Now, this is a little different. I got part of this recipe from Thomas DeLauer. I've mentioned him before. I call him Tommy D. Tommy D's got a great YouTube channel. He does a lot of nutrition videos, a lot of food videos, and I did change his recipe up just a little bit. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what the recipe entails, and it's all of this stuff here. Every one of these components has there's a good scientific reason behind why you're going to do this. So for the sake of the video today, I'm going to measure this out, but I've made this coffee so much I really don't need to measure this out. I start off with heavy whipping cream. Heavy cream, it's whipping cream. I use Horizon. I've told you guys, I think in the last video, I've had to deal with Crohn's disease for the last 18, 20 years. And so I have a very hard time with dairy. I do go with Horizon brand because it doesn't have the hormones, it's organic, doesn't have any of the GMOs, and it seems to be a lot easier on my body. The reason I use heavy cream in this is because 1 tablespoon equals 5 fat grams. And that's awesome. That's a lot of fat. It's a good kind of fat, the kind of fat that you need. And what this will actually do in the coffee, I have found if you don't use the heavy cream, the cream is actually the binder that holds all of this together. If you don't use the cream, then after you blend all this up, it separates very quickly. So I like to use the cream. I use half a cup of that, and then that'll bind the rest of this together. The very next thing I go to is the MCT oil. Now, I've got MCT oil, just straight up medium chain triglycerides. This is the good healthy fats that you need. And I have MCT oil derived from coconut. Now, I do know that coconut oil is not a true MCT. It's not a true medium chain triglyceride. It is actually something called boric acid. So it really only has about 20% of MCT in it. Coconut oil is very healthy for you, so what I do is I just mix the two, and then I know I'm getting what I need. So as far as the MCT oil is concerned, I put 2 tablespoons of the pure MCT oil, and then I mix in 2 tablespoons of the coconut oil. Now, I will warn you, be careful, don't make this coffee. If you're making it for the first time, I wouldn't make it in the morning before you go somewhere, before you go to work. MCT oil, if you're not used to it, can have some pretty ugly side effects. First time I did this, I was running for the toilet pretty quick. So you just got to be really careful with this. I'm used to it now, so now it doesn't bother my stomach at all. We're pretty good with it. The next thing is the cinnamon. Cinnamon is important because as you're going through the ketogenic diet, this will help you with sugar cravings. There's something in the cinnamon that calms down the sugar cravings, and I use a lot of this. I'm going to use a teaspoon of the cinnamon. I will warn you, for me at least, too much cinnamon gives me heartburn when I'm drinking the coffee, so I only use a teaspoon of that. Then we have the pure cacao powder. Now, cacao powder is different than cocoa on several different levels. Cocoa is the manufactured version of cacao powder, so it's not the pure just the pure cacao seed. Now, the nice thing about the cacao, there's a couple of things. One, it does act as an aphrodisiac, so ladies, you're welcome. That's number one. Number two, it has a compound in it that's very similar to caffeine, so you kind of get the caffeine effect without the the really harsh effects that caffeine has. The next thing that I use is pink Himalayan salt. This is a really great product, and the reason I use pink Himalayan salt, this has over 80 minerals in this version of salt. The reason that's important is because when you're on the ketogenic diet, because you're not taking in a lot of carbohydrates, you're not retaining a lot of water. And because you're not retaining a lot of water, you are losing a lot of minerals. And so it's really important that you replace those minerals. So what I do is I actually, I just take a pinch, put a pinch of salt in, and I'm good to go. Be really careful with the salt because it will get you pretty quick, and I don't like my coffee real salty, so I try not to use too much, just a pinch. The next thing is the ghee butter, and ghee butter is pretty magnificent for a couple of reasons. One, the difference between ghee butter and regular butter. Regular butter is 80% butter fat, 18% water, and 2% dairy. Now again, if you have issues with dairy like I do, I try to do everything I can to use stuff that isn't going to upset my stomach. So the ghee butter is actually, what they do is they take regular butter, they boil that down, and they get, that turns into clarified butter. And when they boil it down, what actually happens is they boil the dairy out of it. So what you're left with is a butter product that has no dairy. And then at that point, it becomes clarified butter, and then from there, they caramelize it, and that's what gives you ghee butter. So it's very good. I like it. It's easier to cook with. Regular butter has a smoke point of 350 degrees. Ghee actually has a smoke point of 450 degrees. So if you're going to cook with butter, you can cook at higher temperatures. I like to cook at higher temperatures, so I do that with the ghee butter. Now, word to the wise, this is very expensive. This jar of ghee butter runs about $8, so I tend to use it very sparingly. I'm going to use about a tablespoon. I'm really to the point now, because I've made this so much, that I really don't measure it out anymore because I don't need to. But we'll put that right in there. Should be good to go. Put the top on that. The other thing I do is I really like the stevia. Stevia is great because it gives you the sweet flavor without the sugar. And stevia, unlike other sweeteners, does not elicit an insulin response. So what that means is no matter what I put this in, I'm not going to be storing fat because I'm not eliciting the insulin response that you would normally get from other artificial sweeteners. Stevia is actually made from an organic leaf, so it's all natural and it tastes great. I like to pinch 2 squirts of this in, which makes it nice. The really cool thing about this is by the time we're done, we blend it up. It's really going to taste more like hot chocolate or hot cocoa than it is anything else. And then the last thing is the coffee. Let me grab the coffee real quick. I just fill the coffee up to the line here. You want to make sure it's not too hot, because you can, if it is too hot, you can actually split your container, and you don't want that to happen. What the coffee does is the coffee actually mobilizes the fats out of your cells, gets it into your bloodstream where it can be burned up as energy. So that's where the coffee comes in. Now, coffee just by itself is really good for that purpose. So if you don't want all this other stuff in it, or you don't like the taste of any of this, you can substitute or pull certain items out. But coffee by itself is just very good for you because it does mobilize that fat into the bloodstream so that you can burn it up. So we're going to move over here to the blender. What I do is I put the top on this puppy, screw it on. I am using a Ninja. I like the Ninja for a lot of reasons. I've had a lot of different blenders. For one thing, when I was, Dr. Rhonda Patrick is one of the scientists I follow on YouTube, and for a while I was making her morning shakes. And so a lot of her shakes have fruits and vegetables and all kinds of stuff. And I needed a blender that was going to be able to chop a lot of those leafy greens up and liquefy it. So this was a pretty expensive blender. I think it was just about $110, but it is by far the best blender I've ever used. What I like about it really is the fact that I can stick this small container on top. It blends up very quick. It doesn't leak like a lot of the blenders do, and I can just use it pretty quick. So we're going to blend this up real quick. Doesn't take long. You'll see here in just a second, it comes out really frothy, which I like. And what you're seeing now is the liquid. Like, I don't know if you can see that, but there's a nice froth on top. The cool thing is you will not see this separate. So because we have the cream in there, the heavy cream in there, it's going to stay together. Now be careful, because the one thing you don't want to do is burn yourself. That's why you got to be really careful with the hot coffee. A lot of times I'll even use cold coffee and then just heat it up after I've blended all this together in the microwave for 60 seconds, and then we're good to go. So, oh, that's delicious. I mean, it just tastes like hot chocolate. So that's it for this week. On to week 5. We'll see you next week. Stay healthy. Keep life simple.